Founders, welcome back to the 0 to 5,000 podcast, where we obsess over the convergence of human potential and business results. Today, our hosts Drew McClure and Jordan Mitchell have another insightful conversation for you. So let's jump right in.
All right, founders, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we are joined by Scott Arias. Scott is the CEO of ACE Consulting, a retired Navy Seabee and a former tenured professor in the construction management program at Eastern Kentucky University. Scott holds a Ph.D. in construction management, maintains several industry-specific certifications and licenses, and has over 3 decades of industry experience. In addition to overseeing the strategic vision and growth for ACE, Dr. Arias has written and published 2 books, hosts a podcast, serves on the board of directors for several organizations, and in his free time enjoys all things construction, home projects, and volunteering his time and services to various organizations and charities. And he's here today to tell us about how he has built ACE. So, Scott, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Drew.
So, how did this get started? Did you always know you wanted to start your own business? Where did this come from?
So I think that when you're a founder, you kind of know it because you don't like to be told what to do, so that's where,
True.
Which is kind of funny because I joined the Navy. So, it just kind of, I finally got to a point in my career where I realized that, it was time for me to do my own thing.
How old were you when that was?
I was in my early 30s, and so I started in 2008. So my first year as a professor at a university.
Okay. So what were you doing? Is that what you were doing for a living before you started your company, was being a professor, or were you still in the Navy? What were you doing?
So I grew up in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And so one thing you know when you grow up in New Mexico is you want to leave New Mexico. So I joined the Navy. My brother was in the Navy, and I saw how successful he was. And I actually dropped out of high school my senior year, my last semester, and which is kind of funny because now I have a Ph.D. I'm not sure why I do things backwards, but I just do, So in fact, I earned my Ph.D. before I earned my high school diploma. It's kind of funny.
Wow.
But I joined the Navy and traveled everywhere, got hurt, and make a long story short, I was in a motorcycle accident, and then I fell through an Iraqi oil platform and lost my lower left leg. I returned back to active duty after I lost my motorcycle, after I was in the motorcycle wreck. And so one of the few people that ever returned back to full active duty status. So then I went over, that was at the beginning of Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Enduring Freedom.
Wow.
And so I did 3 years there, hurt myself again, medevac back to the United States, and then I retired. And then from there, after I retired, we moved to Chicago, and I built U.S. embassies overseas for about 3 years. And ultimately, after traveling extensively, I remember I went to Kazakhstan for a 2-hour meeting. So that's like
Dang.
a 22-hour flight with delay, with everything, just to go for 2 hours, and I turn around and come back. But build embassies throughout Africa, South America, Europe, Asia. And then after doing that, I felt like, man, I need to do something different. So I got an opportunity down in Lexington to work for the oldest design and construction firm in the United States, Mason & Hanger. And I was a director of design build. And so I did that for another 3 years. And they acquired another company, and they were looking to move their construction division out to Kansas. Because I'm a loyal, University of Kentucky fan, I couldn't move to Kansas because that is like, that's like a cardinal sin in Kentucky, right? So I actually I figured, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me to do my own thing. So at that time, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go do my own thing. So I started down that road, and then I got a call from a university I had interviewed to work as a adjunct professor, and they said, hey, are you interested in coming on full time as a visiting professor? So I said, well, what the heck, that can't hurt, that could fill the gap, So I always tell people I left my job making 150 grand a year to take a job to do $50,000 a year. So I told my wife, I'll make up the difference. And she supported me, but she also said I was a little bit crazy. So that was 2008. And so we did $7,000 our first year. And this year we'll do about 25 million.
Wow.
So it started with me, and we have about 223 people right now.
223 people.
That's correct. All over the United States and overseas. So we've done work all the way from Greenland to Alaska to to a project down here in Kentucky. So we have people traveling all over the place, and it's really interesting looking at it from my perspective, because started out with very few, and at this point all I do is work on the business, not in the business anymore, which is a very humbling task, but very enjoyable too.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I mean, you've had several different lifetimes lived already. I wanted the time that you were building embassies across the world, I know you got sick of it at some point, obviously the always gone traveling, but I've got to imagine it's also eye-opening and adventuresome to some degree. Is that right?
It is. And it exposed me. And I always said, God had a plan for me, because every experience I had, I rolled into my company that I have today. So I built U.S. embassies. And one of the things that we did on embassies that we had to have was security. So we had one of my sectors in my company. We have 4 different sectors. One of my sectors is security. Did it because I taught construction management. That was where my career was. One section of my company does pre-construction. We call it project controls, scheduling, that kind of thing. And then we have another section that does strictly staffing of management for construction. And I was recruiter of the year for the Navy. So
Wow.
that fit right into my skill set for that. And then the last one is training, because I was a professor for a decade. So there's a natural roll into that.
What kind of training?
Mostly construction related, but we do anything really that, project management, because I'm PMP certified, and I've worked with NASA doing training project management to astrogeologists. Now, what do I know about astrogeology? Absolutely nothing. But what do astrogeologists know about project management? Absolutely nothing.
Right.
So it all worked together. But I've had some interesting experiences in my life.
Yeah. What did those first few years of business look like?
A lot of long working hours, a lot of frustration. It took me from the day I decided I was going to start the business to the time I landed my first contract. It took me 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
And I can honestly say, after doing business development for 9 months, I was at a point where I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
And I thought, because the model I created didn't exist. So it was at that time. Now it's a little more common, but it's still not as common as you would think. And so in my mind, I thought, well, maybe I'm either too soon to this,
Mm-hmm.
or it's kind of like, you're creating social media when you don't have the internet, it's just too soon. So, and so I thought, well, maybe it's just too soon, or maybe there's just not an appetite for it. And then I landed my first contract, and I did $7,000. That first $7,000 I did within a few days, because I already had all the templates and everything put together. And before you know it, I was like, there's something to this,
Yeah.
So it was frustrating. No, I contemplated quitting, but luckily there's no quit in me.
I love that. What were the biggest lessons at the early stages of getting your business off the ground that you most remember?
Finding the right people, number one. That is probably the biggest thing, investing in the right people, finding the right people. And that's, because I'm a professional services business, people are the lifeblood of my company.
Yeah.
So we don't sell widgets, we sell people, And so finding those people that, number one, were going to be loyal to you, that wanted to be part of something that was bigger. My company, we tithe as a company. So about 10 years ago, I decided that I needed to do more because, we're a Christian-based company, as you can see, the fish, so I just felt like, I felt like God was calling me to do more. So and I know that sounds weird for most people maybe for people who are not believers, but I just felt that in my heart. So me and my wife decided, you know what, we're going to tithe for the company in addition to tithing what we normally do. And that led from one thing to another. And currently, this year we're going to give about $300,000 away to a organization called the Lexington Leadership Foundation, and they are our vetting. They're a vetting organization, so they vet all of these for us. And so we give them money all the way to veterans, to actually doing projects for them, to doing. Money has gone to individuals. We bought some computers for some kids that had fathers that were incarcerated.
Wow.
So a lot of different great things to do, because I'm a believer that I'm blessed, so I need to be a blessing, you know? And so that's what we have been founded on, and God has blessed us, So I don't, you don't do to get, but that's a nice byproduct of doing. So that's something that I'd have to. I don't like to use the word pride, but that's something that I'm proud of.
Sure.
In my life, of that, creating an organization that can do good in the world.
Yeah. Oh, you should feel proud of that, man. I mean, there's two different ways of getting in the world: getting to have and getting in order to give. And one is much more satisfying than the other, and better for all, right? Regardless of your beliefs, listening to this, it's hard to knock a man who decided to give 10% away of his profit to help other people, right? That's a good thing.
Well, and I just look at it like this. I'm not a Bible scholar by no stretch of the imagination, right? In fact, I tried to read the Bible one time, and I made it to Leviticus, and I was like, maybe I'll bow out.
Yeah.
So I think God will let me bow on this. But what I do know is that when you're generous to people, that they ask the question why. And I don't think of myself as a terrible person, but I don't think of myself as the best person in the world. And so they're going to look. I want people to look at me and saying, "Well, Scott's a good guy, but he's not that good of a guy." So why would he do something like this? And the why is what I'm looking for there. So
love that. I love that. All right. So finding good people, building your company off your values. What else did you learn those early years were critical to success?
The other one was we practice EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Yep.
And for those of you who know and follow it, it can be a significant change for your company, and it has been for us. And it has really accelerated our growth tremendously.
When did you start implementing that?
It wasn't until probably 8 years ago or so. And then that's when we saw some significant amounts of growth, jumping up several $1 million a year in revenue, gross profit. So what I love about it is it gets, getting your arms around a business that has a lot of different assets, a lot of different aspects in addition to assets. It can be a tough thing. And I know when you put your head down on a pillow at night, I needed to have a good feeling that we had it under control, and EOS has allowed us to do that.
Yeah. So outside of this, we do executive coaching and leadership coaching and all that kind of stuff. And so we're very familiar. We've helped dozens of companies implement traction and EOS into their business and seen similar results. But I'm curious for you, which of those aspects did you see directly tied to that revenue growth? I understand the peace of mind where you get a better understanding of the business as a whole, the accountability chart, people feeling clear on stuff. What were some of the domino effects that you saw that you think really helped the company grow?
I had to say probably defining what our core values are. Now, vision, mission. Okay, so just just to be fully transparent, our vision is we're in the business of building the kingdom. That's our why.
Yep.
You know, we are a construction business, we are a staffing business, but we're in the business of building the kingdom. And secondly, our mission is, using Christian values, we make our clients' needs easy. Because customer service is dead in construction, and I wanted to kind of bring that back. But the core values is really where it hit, where it landed for me, because our 3 core values, we call it RUG, was do the right thing, have urgency in whatever you do, extreme urgency, and be the gold standard. And I didn't just come up with those. It was when I sat down and did, looked at, read traction and did EOS, and I started thinking about my core values. I started thinking, well, what made us success? What has made us successful? So it can't just be, hey, I'm a great salesman, or I'm a great scheduler, or I'm a great this or that. There's got to be something more. And then I thought my strategic advantage is really, getting it done quickly, within the time frame, ahead of the time frames allotted, doing the best job you can. So you are the expert. In a professional services firm, we are the expert. We're selling the expertise. And then the last thing is just doing the right thing. In construction, there's a lot of ethical dilemmas that occur. And if you're doing the right thing, it's like a breath of fresh air, and that had a domino effect for me. And that I like to use that word, because I started it. And at first, when I introduced it into the few people I had, they're kind of like, yeah, whatever, But I said, you know what? You're going to spend money, my money. You're going to act in certain ways, and they have to comply with this. Yeah. And so as long as you're doing the right thing, I don't care what you do, because you can always define it as, hey, I've done the right thing. And I can never scream at you for doing the right thing. I can never get upset for you doing the right thing. And as the company has grown, you talk about the domino effect. Now that we're 200 plus people, that domino effect has allowed us to, now when we have somebody in the rural parts of Alaska, they know that doing the right thing is a core value of mine and a core value of the company. So everything they do surrounds that, and that's especially difficult when you have people spread out all over the place.
Yeah.
So it brought uniformity and consistency to what we do. And I'd have to say that's the biggest thing that has helped us.
That's so cool. Yes, I love that. My question is, when we've seen core values get off the wall, is what we talk about. Like, it's not just on a piece of paper, it's off the wall, and it's into 2 things. The decisions, it guides the decisions we make, and it guides the actions we take. Then you know that your people are actually embodying the values. But many people find that difficult to get it off the wall and know tactically, especially like you said, 200 plus people across, the country. What steps have you all seen be effective in getting it off the wall and into the actual decisions and actions of your people?
Now that is a great question.
Hey, thanks.
And probably, I call it, the word I use I call it institutionalized.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is actually getting it to play out, not just today, not just tomorrow, but 2 years from now. Because we all know, as business owners, we start something and then we do it for a little bit, and then people get complacent or people get lazy and they don't do it. So here's the tactics that I have done, and I think are extremely, and they're not all my ideas. So don't think that they're, I got all the great ideas in the world, because I don't. Okay, but my people do. So here's the first thing. Every meeting that we have, the second thing we do outside praying, because we pray at the beginning of every single meeting, the second thing we do is we have somebody regurgitate the vision, mission, and core values, and then we have them articulate it into actions that we have, for how we live those out. So if we're saying that we're doing the right thing, well, I did the right thing because this client called me and he needs something that I didn't feel was right. So, this is what I did, and it's just that right there was a significant event, completely is just like you said, getting it off the wall, getting it off the wall and putting it on the agenda and making it spring off of the agenda.
Yep.
So that's the first one. So anytime that anybody in my company meets with more than 3 people, I have to do that.
Cool.
It's on the agenda, it's whatever. But then again, you also got to think, okay, well, you got to go a step further there. You got to make it important to them. So here's another thing that one of my guys named Kyle, probably the nicest guy in the world you ever meet. I always tell him that, but and if he listens to this, he'll know who I'm talking about. But nicest guy in the world, great worker too, loyal, honest, hardworking guy. Anyhow, he came up with the idea that every single month we need to come up with a core values champion. So I went and bought three medals. And one's for doing the right thing, core values, whatever. They all have biblical principles on the back, but on the front they have icons, of that reflects something, like gold standard. It has something related to that. And every month, the previous month awardee says, I think this other person has best exemplified it this past month. And then they come over and they basically give them the new medal. They impart them the new medal.
Yes.
So they take the medal from their neck and they put it on them. And then in receipt for that, they get a coin that says, I was a recipient of the gold standard for this, whatever. So they have a coin they can display at their desk. And it's a way to honor our staff, but it's also a way to drive home that core values concept. And to me, that's impactful. That right there just, that gives me chills going up my spine there, and so those are the other things. So I always say from EOS, hire, fire, and promote, right?
Yep.
So that's what we're going to do is hire, fire, promote. So when we hire somebody, we're going to assess them. So during an interview, we assess them. Hey, have you exhibited or will you exhibit our core values? That's the first thing when we hire them. The second thing is, and then we actually ask them. We have them up on the wall in our conference room. And when people come to interview, and our interviews are not just one-on-one, we have there's 4 different stages, and at the very end, everybody on our management staff meets with the person in one room, which is a little intimidating. But 7 people on one, 7 on one. But I asked them, show me how you've lived these items out. And so they go through it themselves and they talk about it. So that's the first one. Fire, I always say that, if you have somebody who is lacking on one core value, but the other 2 values are strong, you could still retain them and maybe train them up on that. However, there's one core value you can't ever get away from, and that's doing the right thing.
Yeah.
So as long as they have doing the right thing and one other, you can retain them, and then we can do remediation to help them. But if they have 2 of them, we're going to have to part ways, So that goes on the fire piece. Or if they've done something that goes against, hey, doing the right thing, they know. And if it's not just what I determine doing the right thing is, it's what multiple people determine what doing the right thing is. And then, if they don't do it, then it's on them.
Yeah.
And then so I forgot where I was with that entire thing.
Hire, fire, and promote. You got through hire and fire.
And then the promote one was when we evaluate for bonuses, and bonuses is the easiest one to explain, but we give a 10% bonus based on us reaching our goals. 7% is dedicated to reaching our gross profitability goals, but the other 3% is an individual one. 1% for doing the right thing, 1% for doing the course, doing urgency, and 1% for being the gold standard. So if they comply, there's dollars related to that.
Wow.
But I have to say more than anything is that, and this is what people can say a lot of things about me, and I'm not a perfect person, by no stretch of imagination. Not like you, Drew. Okay, we're not always as perfect as you.
Not everybody can be. Okay.
so, uh, but I try to, people will say, everybody who knows me, they'll say that I'm probably the most genuine person you'll ever meet.
Hmm.
Who I am is who I am. And that's not a bad thing. I have good things and bad things, but who I am is who I am. And I try to embrace myself and try to embrace, our core values, in everything I do. And so I have to say, more than anything, for any founder or CEO on, listening to this, I would just simply say, you need to be genuine. You need to be who you are.
Yeah.
Who you are is who you are. And that's what makes you special. So be that person. Don't run away and try to be somebody else. And that has played out really, really well for me.
I love that, man. I do want to give you incredible props, and I know you said you didn't come up with it all on your own, but still, the leadership you've shown there is really remarkable. I just had almost the exact conversation with a CEO yesterday that I coach, who was having trouble with that, saying, I'm not really getting this consistency across the board with our values. And we talked about taking a multi-step approach to getting that done. And it was very similar to the steps you described. I was like, you need to start each team meeting asking for examples, like other people calling out examples of where they saw your values, because it makes a brain connection. Like,
absolutely.
Often we'll hear it and maybe even to regurgitate. I know it's rug. It's this, doing the right thing. It's urgency. It's gold standard. But when they're in the day to day, that's often not coming to mind that this is an example of one of those three. Mm-hmm. But as you give examples all the time, it starts becoming front of mind, where they're like, oh, this is one of those examples. Like, I should be doing it like this, right? And then the second that you talked about as well is, we use a phrase, you cultivate what you sell. You will cultivate what you celebrate. And you all doing that medal and that peer-to-peer celebration is going to keep cultivating that value system, because it touches on that intrinsic motivator of feeling appreciated and feeling seen. And it's not just that I get in trouble if I do the wrong thing. I also get rewarded if I do the right thing. And so it's just, anyways, you're crushing it on that. That is so well done.
Well, I can't take all the credit there. So,
the scale you're at, though, that's just what's so impressive. And if you're going to be at that scale, doing that much revenue, that many employees, you've really got to have what you are talking about nailed down. Otherwise, I worked with 50 of us, but then it got lost at 100 and definitely lost at 200 people, right?
Yeah, and you're right there. And it gets difficult and it multiplies tenfold. But I will say this. A lot of the people I talk to about this, they say, well, I don't have the time and I don't want to do that. It's just, they feel like it's a waste. They don't really see the value. And my simple response to them is, well, you're building for the future, though. Because my life now as a CEO with working on the business, my life is much easier than most of my peers, because of the structure we've established.
Yeah.
So most people are worried about, am I going to, is somebody going to steal from me? People are embezzling, this and that. What, I don't have to deal with that, because I have people in place like my CFO. My CFO is, honest to a fault. I mean, he would, he'd do something, that you get in trouble with his wife and he's self-admit, he's just that kind of guy, but I love him to death, and he's like a family member to me. And that right there is I don't have to do as much follow-up on that, because I know that my money is in the hands of somebody that is extremely trustworthy and is looking out for my best interest. And I'd have to say, EOS is something you got to, hit yourself to, because it can be extremely beneficial.
Yeah. Man, it's so good. Apart from EOS, has there been anything else that's really aided you all, whether it's in the culture or the delivery of your service, anything else that you've found to be really integral that would be worth sharing with others if they're aspiring to build a company as big as yours?
So I'm going to say something that may be a little controversial in general, but I want people to kind of hear me out a little bit. I always talk about we act as an adult organization. And I don't mean like that. I don't mean it as like it's something else that goes with adult. But I don't
mature.
mean like that. What I mean, mature. That's good.
Yeah.
We're a mature organization. And what I say by that is that we work in construction, and some people have like foul mouths and do stuff like that, and that's something that sometimes in the professional world doesn't always play out well. But we just try to have fun, and we just have a good time. I mean, like we're doing my next all hands meeting, all employees meeting or whatever you want to call it. We call it all hands because I was in the Navy, right? And during that meeting, we're doing a talent show for the entire company. So we put up 5 different teams and we're doing a talent show. And I am going to be the finale of the talent show. And I'm jumping my go-kart in the parking lot with an Evel Knievel suit on and helmet. So people don't, and some CEOs like, that, brings down the mystique of who you are or whatever. And my simple response is like, people want you be who you are.
Yeah.
If you're a serious person, be that person. Me, I like to have fun. I like to have a good time. I like to, to conversate with people, and I'm an extreme extrovert, so I'm going to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So so that's that. So what I mean by a mature organization is you don't have to follow all the rules, and I don't mean like man-made rules.
Yeah.
So like I can't. People call it bullying. I call it us having a good time and joking with each other.
Right.
And so some of I said, I don't want to be controversial here, but some of the DEI stuff, I don't pay much attention to, because you know what? I love everybody, whether you're what race you are. My dad was a Cuban immigrant, so I am a minority,
Yeah.
I don't care if you're disabled. I don't care if you're, I don't care who you are. I love you, and I'm also going to, laugh and have a good time, and you can do the same in return.
Yeah.
So some CEOs are like, I don't want it to be too personal or whatever. And my simple response is, man, if you have fun a little bit, you'd be surprised by the consequence of it.
Heck yeah. I don't think that's controversial. I mean, I love the advice of being yourself. Like you said, if you're more of a serious person, fine. You can find a way to make that work. If you're a fun, loving, happy person, you can find a way to make that work. Like you can build whatever you want to build. And it's going to be easiest to build it if it's built on who you really are.
And then you got to look for, I'd take it a step further, say, look for opportunities. And here, one of the opportunities this is one I love bringing up, but one of my guys, I built this nice, beautiful office for everybody to work into. And because I'm a big believer in where you work and you take pride in it is who you are, So I made this nice workplace, and one of my guys brought in an old water cooler from one of his construction jobs. And it was like, it used to be white, but it was yellow. So to give you an idea, because it was so old. So I walked back there and I'm like, what is this doing in here? And he's like, oh, I just brought it in so I could have water here or whatever. And I was like, I could buy you another one. He's like, oh, I love this one. And it had pieces off of it. It would just look horrible. So I went and bought another one. But that same day I bought another one, I took his water cooler, put it in the parking lot, and drove over it with my truck, and did a video and sent it out to everybody, And so now, granted, he still got a water cooler, but it was the greatest, to me, that was just a funny, fun-loving thing to do, and it has worked because I have a staff that I think would take a bullet for me,
Heck
So
yeah. Absolutely. This is kind of a side tangent, but have you ever seen the movie Hook? Do you remember that movie?
No, I haven't.
You never saw Robin Williams Hook?
Oh, I have. Okay, the
back in the 90s.
Yes.
Yes. I just thought I've thought about it a lot recently, and this is how my brain works. I'm more of a creative person. I have a podcast, right? Like all this kind of stuff, but it was such a brilliant take on the Peter Pan story, right? The original Peter Pan story was a little boy that never wanted to grow up. That's the Lost Boys. They were stuck in immaturity, the best part of childhood, but we're never going to grow up. That was the whole thing. Like, I don't want to be one of those boring adults. And then Hook was the idea that what if Peter Pan did grow up, but he lost part of himself? Like, he grew up and he became all serious, and he was kind of short with his kids. He had a temper. He was weighed down by life. And then he goes on this adventure to like rediscover how to be an adult while also having the pure childlike qualities that make life fun. And there's this one scene where when he goes back, I don't know if you remember, but nobody believes he's Peter Pan because he's old. He can't fly. He doesn't remember anything. And then there's this one scene where he's starting to remember himself. This little kid comes up and starts pulling his face and smushing his wrinkles back and looking in his eyes. And then he forces his face into a smile. And as soon as Peter Pan smiles, he goes, "There you are, Peter." And I'm like, there's so many adults that we assumed what it meant to grow up and to be mature is just to be serious and closed off and don't let anybody see that you are human, like you said, that the boss is human. And you're embodying that story of like, no, we do great work. We're very hardworking. We're very responsible. We watch our language. Yet we also jump go-karts in an Evel Knievel suit. That's freaking awesome.
Yeah, and you're right. And it's just, I don't know what it is about. I mean, the list of things that bring it home for us. I mean, we have a basketball tournament. I'm in Kentucky, so Kentucky's a basketball, college basketball. I'll say another controversial thing: the best basketball team ever in collegiate sports. No, but then people, I'm sure that people from Duke will have a problem with it. Or Kansas for that matter. But so we do a basketball tournament every year. It's really those small things that make a really, really big difference. And you kind of got to throw off some of especially with the generation we're working with now. They want more than just a paycheck,
right?
And that's a tough thing for guys who Gen Xers like me to kind of grasp, because when I went to work, I won't even consider myself a Gen Xer. I think that it's also about who you are as a person, not just the generation you grew up in. And I'm kind of a baby boomer, and the baby boomer generation said, you get a paycheck, you go to work, and you be happy about it. no matter what you do. And if you're not happy about it, keep your mouth shut.
Yep.
And now it's about, hey, it's not just I want to enjoy what I do. I want to feel the one word that drives me crazy, that I understand, but it drives me crazy, and it's drove me crazy for a long time, but I'm getting it, is I want to feel fulfilled. And I'm like, well, fulfilled means you can pay your rent this month. But I have come to realize that that's not what they mean by being fulfilled. They mean I want to feel like I'm, part of a community. I want to feel like I'm doing something greater than myself. They're really big into not just themselves, but to a greater community. They're much more into that. I was in a generation where the generation of me, a little bit, where it's more like, okay, 80s, it's about the BMW and this and that, but anyhow, it's enough about that.
No, it's really cool. And I also saw that you have a Star Wars helmet behind you. And so I do. I can tell there's also just the fun, creative side of you as well, not just the hardworking construction guy.
Absolutely.
I love it. So at this size company, each stage, there's kind of different challenges. When we were 20 people, when we were 50, when we were 100, what are you finding in this season is kind of the biggest challenge that you are trying to overcome to get to the next goals?
I'd have to say, and this is just from a CEO's perspective, the hardest thing is when you turn the business over. You either work on the business or in the business, and I'm speaking your language here, Drew, because it's the EOS language here. But working in the business is what you do every single day. Working on business means making business better, right? So we all go through stages where we go through a greater percentage, it's a 50-50 or probably a 10% working on the business and 90% working in the business, And then as we grow and our position, we elevate our position, we do much more. The percentage of working on the business is just greater. And the hard thing is that I enjoy being the front man. I enjoy being like most CEOs and most founders. They enjoy being the person that runs the meetings, that ask questions, that thing. But I've had to take a step back and let my president play that role. And that is hard for me to stand in the back of the room and hear, even though the message is correct, but I'm not the one delivering the message. And it's an extremely humbling, aspect of my job. But in the same token, it's quite necessary, because if people didn't do that with me, then I wouldn't be in the position that I am today.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, the emotional component is the challenge right now. Mm-hmm. I'm used to being involved in these ways and having my influence in these ways. And now I have the luxury of having scaled myself out of some of that stuff. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's absolutely it. So my day is much different than what it used to be. So when people look for solutions to something, I don't get a call anymore.
Yeah.
They do it themselves, or not. I used to be the expert in everything that we do, and all my people are much better than me now. And that's a humbling thing. A lot of guys I have who used to came from the university, were students of mine. So I taught them, and now they're teaching me. So that's a pretty humbling thing too.
So where do you place, I know you say working on the business, but that can mean a lot of things. Where do you place your drive and your focus now?
Well, my first one is to, create opportunities through money for people, and that means not only with the giving that we do, but I constantly push professional development because I think it's important, but putting the money behind those people is an important aspect of what we do and working on the business. I'd have to say that when I say working on the business, most of the time I spend not counting widgets or looking at reports or whatever. Another cultural thing is in fact, when I get done with this meeting, I'm going to a meeting to meet with one of my AAs, administrators, to go through what I call CEOs one-to-one. And so every month I meet with my staff, my direct reports, but I also meet with one person that's not a direct report. And I created another one-to-one where they can have a chance to talk to me directly for an hour.
Wow.
And so doing days like that, that's really what working on the business to me is. It's more not just looking at reports and doing that kind of thing, but it's really, driving home that vision. I own the vision, I own, I heard I'm part of a, professional development group, and they talk about different things a CEO does, but I'd have to say they can be summarized in two things. You allocate resources and you mitigate risk. But I add to that and say, you are the vision leader. You have to be the one that drives that vision home one way or the other. And some people think, wow, that's not important. Well, it is very important, especially to the generation we have today. It's because they don't want to be part of just something. They want to be part of something that is bigger than themselves.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm providing.
So. Well said. Well, you mentioned too that you are a part of a CEO group, right? And you value professional development. What are some of the things, whether it be professionally or just taking care of yourself as a person, what are some of the things that you found to be invaluable for you to keep being healthy and growing and resourced?
So the first thing is you need to be involved, and I do this with all my management staff. You need to be involved with some type of group where you have other people, a peer group. So I'm involved in two different peer groups that really, I meet with, between the two of them, I meet probably 3 times a week.
Wow.
Plus doing one-to-ones with having one-to-one coaching sessions with 2 different people. Because I'm a big believer that you can't just have one mentor. You should have a mentor for each section of your life. Somebody you respect and admire, that is a father that you want to be, or, CEO that you want to be. So those different aspects there. So that that's so that that helps me know where I'm at and where my organization's at. Also gives forecast, gives ideas, because you live in a bubble, and that bubble, you need to break yourself out of that bubble. So that helps me break out of the bubble a little bit. The other, I mentioned coaching, and that's a big one. Getting someone to coach me in different areas, no matter, I have. And I'm not saying this because I want to tout, but I have 5 college degrees. I have 9 professional certifications.
Wow.
Most people would say, why am I seeking out coaching? And the response I have is that the more you know, the less you know. So I may have 5 college degrees, I may have a Ph.D., but that has taught me I lack knowledge in a lot of areas. So which is counterintuitive to probably most people who are college professors. So I have all the answers and I can give you all the answers. No, I don't have all the answers, but I know one thing is I can seek them out and figure a way forward, so that's what, and the other thing is that I can do something I really love doing, and that is mentor and coach young people, and the person I'm going to mention is my CFO, which, because I admire this young man a lot, but there was one point when we had a very adversarial relationship when he first came on. My wife was a CFO before, but then she retired from it and handed it over to our current CFO, and we brought him in from college and then grew him, and through different things like I'm talking about, coaching, mentoring, peer groups, all those different things. But I'm at such a point with mentoring and doing different things with him that he recently had a child, and his middle name was named after me. So his middle name is Scott, and that's such a great honor. I can't even describe it. I mean, there's not a dollar value you could pin on that, but it's what is the core of my heart. The core being in my heart is to help others be better. And I don't know what it is, why that makes me happy, why that makes me feel satisfied, but it does. I think we all get a point where we want to hand to the next generation, and that's where I'm at. That's what my job is today, and there's nothing better than to feel that, not just for them, but their family, their lives, their so many different things, and the fact that my people would take a bullet for me. I joke about that, but the truth is that they have my best interest in mind, and all they do every single day, because to them, I'm Scott, and I'm the guy whose job is to take care of them. And I learned that from the military. I always say I practice servant leadership. First of all, I learned that from Jesus Christ. Secondly, I learned it through my career with different leaders that I had, both good and bad.
Yeah.
And servant leadership is that's another thing. You have to choose the style you want to be. And I've tried all the different styles. I've been, a conflict oriented, boss. I've been, laissez-faire boss. I've done all of them in an attempt to figure out who I am. And I ultimately landed on servant leadership because I'm generally a generous guy, and that really falls in line with who I am. And so I just embrace that, and that's how I serve out who I am,
Oh, I love it. I love it, man. It's cool. You're talking about they have your best interest in mind reciprocally because you have their best interest in mind.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of, I went down a rabbit hole a few years ago where I was reading a bunch of different like historical fiction and, the Romans, the Greeks, all that kind of stuff. And the strategy, you talk about picking a strategy, the strategy that the Romans employed with the phalanx, I think. And it was very much built on what you're talking about, which is my shield is covering half of my body, but the other half of the person next to me, meaning I'm exposed on one half unless the other guy next to me is also covering my exposed half, right? And so it was all built on trust. Like I don't have just my shield in front of me. We are a wall because each person is covering the person next to them. and you're trusting it's not going to break, that I can fight for you over here, knowing you've got my right side covered over here. And it was incredibly effective against other strategies. And it sounds like a very similar strategy that you all have employed, even at a moral level.
Absolutely. When you said that, in my mind popped up the speech on Braveheart, where Mel Gibson gets up on the horse and he's riding up and down, and he's not just being inspirational, but he's willing to go fight with them because he got off the horse and went and fought with them.
Yeah.
And that's right there. For me, that's one of the best leadership styles in the world. Somebody who's willing to and I've served in war. I've seen some bad things, and the leaders I really, really respected were the ones that were willing to do the tough things.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes, to the point where you putting your life on the line, and so I've seen it really kind of play out totally. But once again, be who you are, and and hopefully that parlays into a better organization for you.
It's beautiful. What a perfect way to end. That's been the theme all throughout the podcast is being who you are to the core and building from that. And it has proved to be successful and fulfilling. So Scott, thank you for making time for us, sharing your wisdom, sharing your heart, your faith, all of that with us. It has been much appreciated. I know I've learned a ton, and I guarantee my audience has as well. So I really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, Drew. Appreciate it. As always,
thank you.
Have a good day.
Founders, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast and hop into our monthly founder email so we can ensure you stay on the edge of peak performance and massive business results.